Thank you for watching the Housing Oregon YouTube channel. Please like and subscribe. Slide decks from the presenters are going to be available below. Thanks for watching.
All right, so we're going to hit on some heavy subjects. I'm going to kind of work my way through the arc, the tougher points that many of you already know. And then we're going to focus on what we can do about it and how we can help the folks that we're serving. So here we go. I do always like to take a moment to recognize the wisdom in the room. I bet there's plenty of people in this room that could be doing this presentation themselves. So I'm hoping folks will share with us and kind of help me along the way, because I'm sure there's things that I've missed. We are touching on some painful topics, so please take time if needed. Copies of the slideshow and additional materials will be available on the Google Drive. If you have any issues finding that, Spencer or Housing Oregon should be able to. In fact, I will ask them to send out an email to participants of the conference, connecting them with the G Drive, just to have that clear. But no need to take notes unless that's part of your process. All of this will be yours if desired. So just a little caveat, what brought me to this work. It's been kind of a journey for me, both personally and professionally. I'm a little neural spicy. So figuring out my connectedness and my social capabilities was part of my journey. But also working in public housing and services, where that was kind of centered in the work that we're doing, shed a lot of light on it for me professionally and personally. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we work through the content here. But we're going to start by talking about folks who are disproportionately impacted by social isolation. And this is kind of the tough stuff. At least it feels a little painful to me. So part of being human is a deeper need to feel known and truly understood. The foundation of connection is empathy, authenticity, shared values, interests, and support. Fortunately, animals, arts, culture, and movement can help us connect and help counteract some of the health impacts of isolation. So this is kind of a real brief of a very complex thing, but neurologists have discovered that social interactions boost our oxytocin, dopamine, and serotonin. There's neural pathways that are forged in human connection. There's deeper studies that have brought to light that focus groups doing puzzles and things that look like they're brain builders actually don't have as high a level of brain function as people who are interacting socially. It has a profound impact on the way our brain functions, and there is hormonal and physiological response to that. It also reduces dopamine-seeking behaviors. So that's your gambling, your addiction. We're all seeking dopamine on the internet, I'm sure, myself included. Sometimes I just want to see a baby goat or like a little tiny pony running around. But social interaction helps us kind of break that up, and also neurologically it has significant impacts. So our former Surgeon General wrote an incredibly in-depth book and study, which is available for free on the internet, putting together kind of the correlation of the health impacts of social isolation and connectedness, and has directly linked, along with many other professionals, a variety of health issues that are impacted by social isolation. It is also, social isolation is directly correlated with access to healthcare, which is, as providers and folks in the industry, something I urge you all, and I know a lot of you already are, focusing on, because that's a huge deficit. And part of what brought me to my interest in this work, I was reading a book about Chicago heat wave that took many lives. And I read it after we lost some of our participants in the heat wave that happened a few years back. And it's a social autopsy on how people were affected and who lost their lives. And really, in pulling apart that story and understanding who they did lose, they saw that social connection played a huge role in loss of life. All right. So who does socialization affect? Unfortunately, everyone. But disproportionately, there are some groups, especially some phases in life, that you'll experience more social isolation. And I think a lot of you already focus your work around meeting the needs of these populations. So I'm kind of preaching to the choir here. But as you know, older adults, there's studies showing that the digital divide actually plays a part in connectedness and access to healthcare. We already know, like it's hard. It's hard to make an appointment online. It's frustrating for all of us, especially folks that aren't as confident or comfortable with digital technology. People with disabilities are often limited in social connectedness, especially because a lot of the spaces that we work within are not as accessible. Neurodiverse people can be sidelined, and many struggle, especially on the spectrum, with the ability to navigate social norms. And social inclusion disproportionately affects this population. And our LGBTQIA population also struggles, especially in certain regions of the United States where there's not as much representation, safety, and protections for that group of people. I'm in that group of people. I say I like it, so I mean. Socioeconomic disparities have impacted our Black communities, and a lot of this has happened due to systematic discrimination, mass incarceration, and has disproportionately affected this community and isolated many. As you know, navigating the world with a record can be incredibly isolating and impactful for our people in Black communities. Many are impacted by a valid distrust of healthcare, mental health care, and other care systems that center whiteness. And there are long-term impacts caused by racism and generational trauma. The impacts of code switching, navigating white supremacy, and living in less diverse areas can also impact social connection. Similarly to our Black communities, many people in our immigrant communities have experienced mistreatment in healthcare, lack of access to healthcare, which is very much at the center of social isolation. Immigrants can also have long-term stress in navigating our system and might feel unsafe participating in social events. Basic needs such as healthcare, mental health care, and access to food can be limited for folks that are undocumented. I know some of you here are working directly with that population and see the level of stress and isolation that causes. So impacts on our youth. As you're all aware, our youth, this generation especially, are adversely impacted by bullying and social media. They're inundated with a lot of negative information and processing volumes more information than we did at that age. And we still don't know how that's going to impact these younger generations for years to come. We are seeing that social media has a neurological effect, especially through different stages of development. And it can lead to isolation, a lot of body dysmorphia, anxiety, and other mental health issues have been linked to social media. But social media is not all bad. I was surprised to learn this because I've been shaking my fist at it for a while. So as we just talked about, bullying, body image, social pressures, triggers, compulsions, and consumption, all of the bads. But with that, there's some goods. Folks are communicating more long distance with loved ones. I've been able to take advantage of those Skype sessions halfway across the world, and it's pretty special. Connecting with others that have shared interest, which sometimes, especially for folks that live in rural areas and have niche interest, it's a huge tether to feeling connected with the outer world and feeling understood for their own personal interests. We also are we're broadening our understanding of cultures and other people, and I think that's one of many wonderful things about the internet and Professor YouTube is that we're learning, we're watching documentaries, we're growing, and we're understanding other cultures more. All right, trauma and ACE scores. We always got to do a little trauma and ACE scores. I struggle a little bit with it because it just really does kind of simplify something that's so complex. But one thing that I have learned a lot in this work is that the more focused we are on how we're going to work around our barriers and the complexity of our human experience, the more likely we are to see the path. And that speaks to the neurological experience. So we're carving out, even just in this space right now, neural pathways are being formed, things are being thought of in different ways. And we have to stay focused on what we can change and what we can do, or else we'll be crushed. It's very difficult to just live in a constant space of everything's bad. And sometimes I see newly diagnosed or folks that are processing their trauma get stuck in that cycle. And it's almost like self-abuse, right? You have trouble seeing outside of a difficult experience and challenge. And it's not that I want to be toxically positive about it, but we do need to focus on what we can change and how resilient and amazing humans are. Oh, so I was surprised at this one, impacts of the pandemic. So according to the experts, the pandemic actually didn't have a significant impact on isolation. It did impact our healthcare system. A lot of different professions are reevaluating, including a lot of healthcare workers, and there's projections that that's going to have a significant impact for years to come. Access to healthcare is already an obstacle in our post-capitalist world, and now we're seeing less people in the field, and it's a struggle. But Americans are reevaluating choices they are making in their lives, even though we are incredibly divided economically and politically. The hope is that maybe that will be a pivot for change. Maybe people will broaden awareness and move in a direction of connectiveness. So let's talk a little bit more. This is kind of the more interactive parts of this. I'm not going to just be talking at you the whole time. But we're going to talk a little bit more about shifting our culture. One of the participants in the grief group in the last session was talking about grace, and she called it the flexibility of the heart, which I thought was so sweet and special. But that is one divide that causes barrier to connectedness, is unwillingness to understand or to be interested in other people's experiences. So the more we can encourage that as providers, the better we can serve the folks that we're working with. We do want to talk more about therapy. It seems weird, can be kind of awkward in certain situations, but it does help reduce the stigma. I like to call it the fair share. So we don't ever want to burden someone with our own experience. That's a boundary cross. But it's okay to say, I see a therapist and it's been life-changing for me. It's helped me work through blah, blah, blah. It's all right to be open. It's actually very healthy and it humanizes people's experiences. Definitely, we're wanting to offer support. And for those of you who are in resident services, peer support in the helping profession, I know you're already really bridging the gap with connection to healthcare. Thank you for doing the work that you do. Humanize everything. Folks don't like to feel pathologized. So important, but I think those of you that are in the helping profession, you already know that. And then we want to talk more about spreading awareness, what healthy social connection looks like. So I did a little kind of like, what can I find in 10 minutes? Because I was going to focus a part of this on what healthy connection and healthy friendships, healthy romantic relationships look like. But there is a world of information out there. I gave myself a little 10-minute search time and came up with a pretty hefty stack of information, really well put together information on learning to be assertive, to be in emotionally healthy relationships. All of it is available in Spanish and English. But I encourage you, after this, we get through this material, come on up and look at it. If you want to take something, you're welcome to. But be your own research librarian. There's a world of information out there. And if you are working with a resident or participant that's really struggling to understand what a healthy, balanced relationship looks like, there's a world of information. Of course, we always want to send people to therapy, but if that's not their bag and they've tried it and it's not successful, there's also workbooks. There's actually classes. I have a few binders from Kaiser, has a class series on emotional regulation, acceptance and commitment, and interpersonal effectiveness. So that's just within Kaiser. Providence has its own information, tons of classes, a lot of resources, as do other healthcare providers, and our old friend, Professor YouTube, who really championed that one. I'm sure there's a TED Talk about that. So where do we start? There is no single answer for everybody. We want to be the coach, plant the seed. As service providers, we can't be the entire support system. I did that a lot when I started in this work, where I was just so in it. And I realized when I got moved that left a void for the people that I was serving. And that's not to say it's not okay to stay connected to the folks you serve, but it's so important to urge them to create their own social support system and to work towards that and encourage it. So we want to allow others the opportunity to lead. Again, we're centering healthcare. And remember that smaller activities and gatherings have more of a likelihood of connecting people. They actually mentioned that in the grief group before this. Oftentimes as providers, we're encouraged to have larger activities to bring more people in, but it really is that little table of people where the most important conversations take place. So feel free to push back with that if you're getting urged to do so. And then there's also alternatives for folks that don't feel comfortable in human connection. So that's okay. There's actually ways to release oxytocin, all of your neural responses, reduce stress, help with that health impact outside of social situations. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that. Part of that is creating a culture of compassion. I know it sounds a little woo-woo, but it's true. It's so true. And it's worth thinking about in every environment. Sometimes we lose touch with that in the stress of the work. So much that we're focused on is like the harder things, but really centering, how can I effectively communicate this today? How can I create an environment where it doesn't feel like everything's on fire when the world kind of is on fire? And part of that is humanizing our journey, again, without burdening others, lifting people up, recognizing the work and efforts, successes, model listening and staying curious, and be authentic. I think folks know that. People know. They know. All right. So again, talk about healthy relationships, but this is a touchy subject with folks. So you want to make sure if you are opening the door that there's a crack in it if you're bringing it up with someone. Sometimes we will be working with folks that are clearly, flagrantly in abusive situations, relationships, romantically, personally. And we so desperately want to say something about it, but it's important to not broach that until someone's ready. But again, 10 minutes, huge stack of resources. A lot of them are around romantic relationships, so on and so forth. And there fortunately are a lot of supports around that. All right, for our neurodivergent folks, my partner shared these resources with me. And Neuroclastic, I think, is pretty fantastic. I decided to put a clip of their most current, just their welcome page on their website. And they're really good about raising Black voices, Black autistic voices, and centering Black autistic voices. So again, it doesn't have to be for someone to comply with social norms. It can be finding spaces where they can be wholeheartedly themselves. But there are resources out there that are for folks that are trying to navigate social situations. There's also groups online, meetups, specifically for autistic adults on the spectrum, that are pretty fantastic. I kind of stumbled upon one once and had a really fun time at a bar. But know that there's a multitude more resources than this, and if you're having any trouble or curiosity around the subject, ask someone who's on the spectrum. They're a fountain of information. All right, we're gonna do a short visualization. So I'm hoping everyone will take a moment. I know it's a little woo, but also it's what all the sports teams and sports therapists are doing these days, so it's also cool. So I want you guys to close your eyes, think of a time or a space where you felt the strongest sense of belonging. You felt like you could be your complete, authentic self. All right. Thanks, folks. So I'm hoping that will kind of come into our next conversation. I know we have some folks in chairs over here. If you guys can kind of scooch together, I'm hoping we can all have conversations about how we create spaces and how we create an inclusive culture or a culture of belonging. And think about activities that you're doing. I'd love to hear a little bit more about that. But we're gonna just take a few minutes. We can go table by table, we can move around, find what feels comfortable, but let's have a conversation. Sorry, Zoomies. It is hot up here. I was cold over there. Is it?
Oh my gosh, it's like 20 degrees hotter than there.
It's weird because when I was sitting down, I was fine, but once I got up here.
It's hotter up there. There's a thermal. Yeah, as soon as I got up here too, it was also hot.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Cook it.
it's a good thing you got that.
Right?
So, you're gonna play a video, right?
Yes.
Okay, when you do that, run it through your speakers, and we're just gonna put this microphone here.
Yeah.
And so that'll get it to that speaker, and this also goes to Zoom.
Okay.
So that's how we'll get that sound out.
And is it on right now?
Yeah, yeah, that light's on, we're on.
Oh, okay. I like that I can keep it further away. I don't want to be the focus. Is the volume up high enough?
Yeah, you're at 100.
Okay.
We can.
Slide I'm on. Let me look through my slide deck. It's not for a few, I know that.
Yeah, Right here looks good. Yeah, that'll be a good spot.
All right.
Cool.
Okay.
All right.
Going good. And then I should be wrapped by 5 o'clock or a little bit before that. Yeah? Okay.
Oh wait,
I think so. So I started at 3:45, right?
I thought it was 3:30.
Oh, I did start a half hour ago. Okay.
Yeah, 3:45. I mean, since it's the end of the day,
Yeah,
yeah,
people
more
are
stuff to
like,
talk about. We can talk.
yeah. Okay, it is till 5 p.m. Okay, good. All right, thank you. know about. And some populations I hadn't even focused on, like our vets. So I'm encouraging you over this next little section, please, please, please think about sharing with us if you have some things up your sleeve. So first, we're going to talk a little bit about bonding through physical activity. Just a little caveat, I always like to say, be careful about messaging. Make sure it's about gaining strength, not about physical appearance. But physical activity can be an amazing way for folks to bond with each other. It also releases oxytocin and dopamine, so it can help with those contributors. But I want to take a little moment and see how we can bring accessibility to physical activities with the folks that we serve. So if anyone would be willing to share, I'm sure some of you are doing things. How have you brought accessibility to physical activities? Yes, yes. Okay, who's my first hand? This is hard. Okay, I'm gonna squeeze through here. Sorry, bud.
You are. I'm Deborah, and we have a gardening program. So we have gardens, and people get out there and get active and garden. It's very therapeutic.
Brilliant. I love it. How about you?
Every Tuesday we have a fellow named Jared who comes in and does Qigong. We call him Qigong Jared, and it's chair Qigong with Jared. So you sit in your chair and he leads you through just some mindfulness and some yoga, stretching and stuff.
Let me swap the batteries. They're new batteries, but
It's true. We could do better with noise insulation, I know, in public housing, especially since. Well, the difference with neighbor conflicts alone. Yeah, go ahead. I love that. I know, I even struggle a little bit with standing up a level higher than everyone. So what Sandy's saying is creating a dynamic where it's not you behind a desk and a computer. It's like a less clinical approach, a more humanized approach to interacting with folks. I love that. Also, a couple other things. We don't always think about it, but reducing clutter, that kind of overwhelming, overstimulating, especially for our neural spicy folks, can be helpful, even though it doesn't seem necessary. It can be helpful. All right, so yeah, people are more likely to spend time in places they feel safe and comfortable in. So that whole visualization, thinking about where we feel, what spaces we feel the most included in, and trying to kind of recreate that can be a helpful tool. All right. We want to center other cultures and let people lead culturally relevant events. I think a lot of you are already doing that. Does anyone want to share how they've created culturally relevant events or encouraged folks to lead culturally relevant events?
Yes, at an apartment complex that I work at, we're doing a food festival. So I know we're going to have at least 4 cultures represented, and people are bringing food and sharing food like a big potluck, basically. And I think there's going to be a lot of food that people haven't tried. So it's going to be really new experiences for a lot of people. I think it's going to be really cool.
I love that. Food, the great unifier, food. We were just talking about that. I had the opportunity to see, I don't know if you guys know, the Black Power cookbook. It's kind of a movement and a really beautiful cookbook. It's kind of like cookbook and art book. And I saw the 3 men that put that book together or wrote that book speak at the literary festival a few years back. And one of them, oh, the quotes this man had were so brilliant, but he said, break bread, build bridges. And it's so true. Food and sharing your cultural experience and your love of food is an amazing way to unite people. Also, check out that book. It's so good. A lot of African and soul food. It's just it's a cultural journey. Black Power Cookbook. It's a beast, man. It's like Taschen. It's a giant, but it's so good. I have it if you ever want to borrow it. Oh, I love it. So we're talking a little bit more celebrating. Does anyone else have anything they want to share on how they've created that? We had some folks from our Native community that were talking about that in our grief group. But yeah, let's.
I don't know if I really need the microphone, but.
I mean, you do for our Zoomies.
Oh, yeah, that's
our
right.
Zoom Zooms. Hi, guys.
So we do have one property that's for veterans that were previously homeless, and then we just set up a map of the globe on the wall, and everybody that lives there was instructed to take a white pin and put it from where they're from originally, and then put another pin where they served. And that created a lot of good community response, people talking to each other and sharing stories and stuff like that amongst their veterans.
That's beautiful. I love that. Anyone else? Yeah, here you go.
For me, I think it's just the kind of like more learning, like acknowledgement on how one holiday can mean different thing or different timeline for other folks in other culture. Like in Vietnam, we celebrate New Year as Lunar New Year, and not in Korea and in other countries may celebrate the New Year differently than January 1st. So just kind of like celebrate that and telling people that that's how my culture we celebrate New Year, and just spread the word. So
I love that. Brilliant. Anyone else?
At our properties around like the winter holidays, what we will do is like do a survey or ask people like if there's any specific holiday they would want represented and celebrated. And no one has said yet, but that's something really good to like bring to the table because there's holidays we don't even know about. And like we would be happy to celebrate and we're like, if there is anything, we'll get, the decorations, the food, whatever, just so they can make sure like their culture is represented too.
I love that. Okay, oh, excited. Okay. All right, thank you for sharing. Wonderful. I remember what's next. What do we got here? My remote is not working. I have to get up on the tower. Bear with me. Oh, you guys get to see my messy desktop. Don't tell him. There's so many folders too. There's just a never ending. All right. I'm glad you're coming up here because this is the one with the video. Bear with us. Thank you for your patience. So I'm going to put it on slideshow, and I want you to stick around, make sure my video is working. But for some reason, my cursor's not moving. It's not cursing.
Is the video, it's an actual file, it's not like a YouTube link?
It is a YouTube link.
Oh, it is? Okay.
But I've got internet, I connected. Should I just show it from there?
From YouTube? Probably
Well,
so.
instead of the slideshow.
So, I don't know what's going on, we got some.
Sorry, little technical issues. So I'm going to show you a little clip from a documentary called Alive Inside. I highly recommend this documentary, but be sure to grab a box of Kleenex before viewing because it will make you cry so hard. Sure? Oh, should we just get on YouTube? We're going to get a commercial, y'all, and we're going to cope with it. Alive Inside. Just the trailer. Thank you. I was so proud of myself for dropping it in my slide.
Microsoft's not working right when you want it.
Of course not. Son of a biscuit. Oh, is Hilton getting... Oh, okay. It's probably upset about my desktop. I am too. I have work to do. Yeah? Let's just watch it on there, yeah. Zip, zip, zip.
Let's see here.
lost the music. I love it.
I'm just going to turn the volume up on that side.
Okay, and then I press, you flag me when you're ready.
Yeah.
We're in environments. All right, we're almost there, you guys. Just a minute. Less than that. Thank you, sir. So nice. Patient.
What do you think of music? My heart belongs to music. I love it.
Have you ever had music just hit you in a place that immediately brought you to tears? Music has that power.
Music connects people with who they have been, who they are in their lives. Because what happens when you get old is all the things you're familiar with in your identity are all just being peeled away.
We're going to do your medicine now.
Our healthcare system imagines the human to be a very complicated machine. We have medicines that can adjust the dials. Blood pressure, oh, turn that down. Blood sugar, oh, turn that down. We haven't done anything to touch the heart and soul of a patient.
One resident that barely opened her eyes, she didn't respond. Knew her for 2 years. Once we put the iPod on her, she started shaking her feet. She started moving her head. It was amazing. It can't get away from me if I'm in this place.
Takes me back to my school days. Oh God, that's beautiful.
Does it make you happy to sing for us?
Yeah.
Every human being needs stimulation from the outside, from little babies to old people.
American culture is wrong. There is actually life.
There is no pill that does that.
We have a coffee connections every week, and depending on our properties, it shifts during each day. Mine's on Monday, and what I started to do is, we have our coffee and our donuts.
What color is that? Okay,
The new battery.
This is the old battery.
Like a coffee shop kind of music, and it's very light, very calming, and a lot of the residents are kind of asking, "Where's that music coming from?" And I was like, "No, I thought that would be nice," and they all heard positive vibes from it, and they're really enjoying the music, and it's good for them to all interact with each other and just have something in the background, so it's not that awkward silence. They can have conversation amongst each other and still have that nice, calming, warm music in the background too.
That's huge. I love it. Okay.
So I'm a doula, and I use music as part of being very therapeutic for my clients, especially when they're trying to manage the pain, and it has got them through a beautiful birth.
I love that. And if you have a chance, Alive Inside is it's a Alzheimer's kind of a memory care documentary. But they do speak about the neurological impact and connections that happen when folks are listening to music. Even they had someone that was non-responsive, nonverbal in their physical and verbal response to music. It's kind of magical. If you have a chance, it's called Alive Inside, and it's one of the most powerful documentaries I've seen. It's really beautiful. Anyone else want to share how you've brought music into your work? All right, we're winding to our end here. Sorry, I'm having some issues with my slideshow here. So in addition to music, we were talking a little bit about gardening, but nature is a huge tool for creating social connection, but also for releasing those important hormones that help us cope with stress and help us have better health. So I have a couple resources on here that I want to make sure you guys hear about. Oh, I'm sorry. I jumped to my Healing with Animals slide. But we have PDX, People of Color Outdoors, it's an amazing group. There's also Wild Diversity that has hiking groups. Oregon Walks, who I know a lot of us partner with, have an Afro ecology walk that's been happening. That's pretty awesome. DisabledHikers.com has a lot of resources and groups that go out and help assist with transportation. And Travel Portland has accessible trail listings that are wheelchair walker accessible if you do decide to organize groups. But I encourage you to explore more because there's a lot out there. If you're outside of the Portland metro area, be your own research librarian, get online and see what's happening. So Healing with Animals, it's been shown to have a great impact on mental health, post-traumatic stress disorder, and physical health. And there are ways for folks that don't have pets to have connection with animals. There's farms, volunteering at animal shelters, goat farms, alpaca farms. Anybody ever go to Portland Goat Party? Oh, it's real good. It's a real good time. So many cute little baby goats. And they have other baby animals that you can snug on, and it just heals the soul. It's real good. But again, I invite you to explore and see what's out there. We also, arts and cultural events. We have some really amazing resources in the Portland metro area. There's culture passes from the library. I was telling these folks, I didn't even know about that till I did this little exploration. And then for folks that have Oregon Trail cards, there's a Arts for All program where you can get $5 passes to things that would be quite a bit more expensive. OMSI has a teen tech center. If you haven't seen it, you can arrange a tour. If you're a service provider, I highly recommend arranging a tour. A little jealous. Those teens really have a cool setup in there. And it's been sponsored by a handful of local tech companies. So there's a recording booth for folks that want to make music. There's sneaker design. There's all kinds of like Korg synths and musical instruments for kids to learn, and sewing machines if kids are sewing, but there's just so much to do in there. I highly recommend checking that out. So some final tips and takeaways. Keep it fresh, talk to each other. People that are doing the work or living the life are often the most knowledgeable, you included. But spaces like this are really important to help us share what we're doing and learn more and get ideas of how we can serve folks better. We always want to be mindful about vicarious trauma. I think preaching to the choir here. It's hard to see people struggle with the most difficult moments in their life. It's hard to see people struggle with things that we wish we could say and can't solve, but it's important to be an example of self-care and to focus on yourself and your own journey, and not try and change people if they're not ready. So it's always been a hard one for me. And creating our own support system is important, and it's great modeling for the folks that we're serving. So you, in your work life and personal life, it's so important. So I invite you guys, I have a little stack of books that I think are relevant to the subject, if you'd like to take a look. But again, these will all be on the Google Drive. The Heat Wave is the book I referenced earlier, the social autopsy of how that impacted the community. It also is fed a lot of work in emergency preparedness. It's a pretty fascinating book. Mental Health in Communities of Color, I think, is an important read for anyone that's working with folks that have chronic mental health, kind of understanding culturally relevant aspects of navigating mental health for folks in our Black communities. Again, the epidemic of loneliness and isolation is free online, and it's beautifully written and put together with a lot of amazing professionals. One of my favorite books on social connection is by Harriet Lerner. I read it when I was a young person and hadn't had a real good example of what healthy social connection should look like, and learned so much. I would say it's kind of foundational to how I connect and understand people. Playful Intelligence is fascinating and is really about resiliency, and there's some interesting long-term studies around resiliency. Highly recommend if you have a chance, if you're a reader. And then Design for Belonging, one of my favorite. It's more based in educational setting, but is so relevant for housing. So if you are a reader and are interested in creating inclusive spaces and a sense of belonging with the folks that you serve, highly recommend that book. But please feel free to come on up and look at information and share, take pictures. Yeah. Thank you.
watching you in certain spaces just for safety purposes. There were certain things, making sure that they